Boy, where to start? This is amazing. Thank you very much, Chancellor Wilson, President Gertler, Dean Macklem, my dear, dear friend Deepa, faculty, fellow graduates, friends, family, and honored guests. And I just want to pause because there's 3 former board chairs here in attendance today. Mr. Brendan Calder, Alan Karp, Paul Atkinson, very close colleagues and friends. I would not be here without them and their support. It's been extraordinary. Wayne Clarkson, who ran the film festival, one of my closest friends. He was really the person that put the film festival on the map. Suzanne Weiss, my managing director, who was an extraordinary colleague in arms as we struggled in the early days of the festival. I have some colleagues that I work with here as well. Cameron Bailey, the artistic director of the film festival. Andrea Picard, our wonderful programmer for Wavelengths. My niece is here, and my wonderful partner, Federica Foglia, is here as well. Now, a few years ago, the French gave me a wonderful honor. They made me into a Chevalier des Arts et des Lettres. And the translation for that is a French Knight of the Arts. Don't you love the French? And when I got the award, I asked them, so do I have any privileges that go along with this? You know, any kind of rights, et cetera, et cetera. And they said, yeah, you have one privilege. You can ride a horse into any church in France. Now, I thought this was very cool. I haven't actually done it yet. I may well do at some point in time. So I look forward with great anticipation to the rights and privileges that come along with today's honorary doctorate here at the University of Toronto. To be honored in the city in which I live by such an illustrious university as this one is extremely meaningful. This university is also very important to the history of film in this country. A number of the most important filmmakers who have ever stepped behind a camera in this country graduated from U of T. Norman Jewison, Don Owen, David Cronenberg, Adam Agoyan. In the 1960s, when there was no feature film industry in English Canada, 3 seminal feature films were made by U of T students while they were undergraduates. In 1965, David Sector made a very important film about campus life entitled Winter Kept Us Warm. And this film inspired another young U of T undergraduate, David Cronenberg, to make his first 2 features using the Scarborough campus as his locations, Stereo and Crimes of the Future, which were made in 1969 and 1970, respectively. Norman, Don, and Adam each made distinctive contributions, as have many other U of T graduates. In a very real way, this university played a central role in launching the Canadian film industry. So with the bestowing of this degree, it is very meaningful to become a part of the University of Toronto family, to feel that I am a part of this illustrious cinematic history. Now, what of the world that you are about to engage in and that eagerly awaits you upon your graduation? It is certainly undergoing many, many changes and its share of stresses and challenges. Disruption is a word that is constantly being bandied about these days, but the world has been in a constant state of disruption since time immemorial. So this is not an idea that should frighten you. It is something that should be embraced. And just one very small personal example, my own grandfather, whose career was spent in the Royal Air Force from 1915 to 1947, he was born before the Wright brothers flew their first plane. And when he died, the first moonwalk was a mere 5 years away. Now, I think that's living in disruptive times. It is very much the human way to push into the future and to test the limits. The result is that we have to adjust to the pace of this change and to sort through confusion and differing ideas. Diverse opinions are everywhere. Hierarchies are crumbling. Authority is distrusted. Where do we look for clarity? What does clarity consist of? Is clarity even possible? And how do we create value and meaning amidst these very, very real challenges? The year in which I graduated, in 1971, came at the end of the exciting decade of the 60s. Yes, indeed, the times they were a-changing. The Cold War, Vietnam, May 68, the Prague Spring, the Moonwalk, Woodstock, Kennedy, Khrushchev, Fidel, Martin Luther King, Ho Chi Minh, Pierre Trudeau. It felt like a very important moment in history. My generation set out to change some of the world. We certainly set out to challenge our parents' values, to take the chill out of the Cold War, to de-emphasize material values, to create a different space for women in our society, and to make some pretty cool music and some very good films. Now, history will judge our legacy, but as you graduate in 2016, your challenges are equally significant, and the stakes now actually seem to be higher. Environmental concerns, global warming, energy challenges, income disparity, immigration, terrorism, digital innovation, all speak to a world that is unsettled and under extreme pressure. These problems cry out for your creativity and innovation, and yes, commitment. Sitting here in Toronto today, some of these problems may seem far away. They are not. As an individual, it is easy to be overwhelmed by all this, to want to retreat to safe places, to block out the world. It will be easy to step out of the gates of this university today and move into your career paths. Most will, I did, and there's nothing wrong with getting on with your lives. But if you can, I would urge you to travel, see the world, move out of your comfort zone, be fearless, put yourself in unfamiliar situations in unfamiliar cultures. I have just returned from a couple of weeks in 2 Syrian refugee camps on the Greek-Macedonian border, where about 15,000 men, women, and children were living. The borders have been closed on these refugees as they were on their way through to Europe in hope of a new and better life. We were in 2 camps, Idomeni and Echo. The experience was, in a word, humbling. Just listen to these statistics. 59.5 million people currently displaced in the world, 19.5 million refugees, 10 million stateless people. In Syria alone, more than 250,000 people have been killed and 12 million, more than half of the pre-war population, displaced. 5 million have fled the country. The UN has called it the largest refugee crisis since the Second World War. I went, along with my partner Federica, whose idea it was and who is here today, to go and help as private, non-attached volunteers. We basically just showed up. There we met many other volunteers from all over Europe. Most of them were under 30. Many of them had been volunteering for months on the Greek island of Lesbos. We've both been processing the experience since our return. All these refugees were living in appalling conditions, in tents in fields, railway tracks, on railway platforms, relying on extremely primitive conditions. Their future was totally uncertain. They were running away from war to create a better future for themselves and for their children. But we both found the experience incredibly uplifting. The resiliency and spirit of the refugees was deeply moving, as was the resourcefulness and generosity of the volunteers. Many columnists and pundits today are remarking on how democracy is under threat. And in many ways it is. But what we saw in these refugee camps was a concrete reminder that democracy is indeed alive and well. People fleeing dictatorships in search of a new life, a new hope for themselves and their children, traveling towards the beacon of Europe despite all of its current problems. And then there was the spontaneous generosity of thousands of volunteers who simply went and served because they thought it was important and they could make a difference. People of your age, people like you. The experience was clearly overwhelming. Anything we did felt like a tiny drop in the bucket. How can you make a difference when there's so much to do? When you look at 15,000 refugees camping out in squalor, in mud, wind, and rain, the problem seemed insurmountable. But it soon became obvious that there were many people like us, other volunteers, helping out, working it out, showing up. Collectively, the volunteers were making a difference. In fact, the camps could not survive without them, providing meals, clothes, and care. The NGOs, and there were many of them there, can only do so much. But individually, we felt inadequate. Upon reflection, it felt like a microcosm of the democratic experiment. Free individuals in action, together, with all the messiness, imperfections, and chaos that entails. In our search for perfection, for order, control, efficiency, It was revealing to be reminded of its opposite. One of my favorite poets, Philip Larkin, described life as consisting of a beginning, a muddle, and an end. You are now finishing the beginning stage of your life as you graduate and are setting out to navigate the muddle. You are the future leaders of this country. You have received a privileged education. What you make of that responsibility, both collectively and individually, will mark both this country and quite possibly the future of this planet. As you graduate today, facing all the challenges you will face, I urge you to keep the following thoughts in your minds. We can all make a difference, even if the challenges look overwhelming, even if it seems as if the individual can make little impact. You do not know your own power. Start believing in it. We need your commitment. We need your creativity. We need your energy and passion. We need the best parts of you. I send you every good wish as you set off on your life journey. Make it a safe one and make it a caring one. Thank you very much.